From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Enjoying a day on the river with safety in mind.
The Buffalo River runs nearly 50 miles through Perry County, Tennessee. Soon the river will have helpful GPS markers along the banks.
What could South American producers be planning when it comes to planting?
That's a new phenomenon.
We'll have the latest market intel as farmers face a new concern, a possible government shutdown. The impact that could have right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Rudd. Clinton is on assignment. Job openings in the U.S. fell unexpectedly in July. The unemployment market, just another area being closely watched by investors and the Federal Reserve right now when it comes to the nation's economic strength. Now, the Fed could finally cut interest rates this month, while a spending showdown on Capitol Hill runs the risk of causing another government shutdown. As Laura Aguirre reports, stuck in between are consumers waiting for relief from higher prices.
The time has come for policy to adjust. The timing and pace of rate cuts will depend on incoming data.
That was the chair of the Federal Reserve in late August. Now another key inflation gauge is out as consumers await a much-anticipated interest rate cut this month. The Labor Department's July jobs report shows available openings down from June by about 240,000, the lowest point since January of 2021, and well below economists' expectation of just over 8 million jobs. July's report also shows the number of people voluntarily quitting their jobs held steady from June, still around 3.2 million. And hiring actually picked up by about 270,000 over the previous month. The relatively level labor market, along with July's consumer price index having cooled to just under 3% year over year, may not only cement a rate cut when the Fed meets 2 weeks from now, but it may mean a deeper cut than the Fed initially planned, which would ease some prices for consumers like mortgages, car loans, and credit purchases.
The core issues facing the American people are the cost of food and housing.
In America, it's hard to have hope if you don't have a home.
While there appears to be bipartisan understanding of what consumers need, the immediate focus for lawmakers is keeping the government running. They'll return to the Hill next week, and they'll have just 13 days to agree on a path forward before the current federal budget runs out September 30th, risking a possible pause in critical government services for millions of Americans. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for AgDay.
So lawmakers have until the end of this month to pass legislation to prevent a lapse in funding. But what if the government did shut down? What impact would that have on farmers and ranchers? I asked Marcia Bunger, the administrator of the Risk Management Agency, about the possible impact that could have on things such as crop insurance and risk management tools for producers.
You know, it doesn't mean the end of crop insurance if we do have a government shutdown. It does mean, though, we have to reduce staff considerably, and we only maintain the basics. My understanding is that we probably have 30 to 60 days after a shutdown to continue helping process with the improved insurance providers' claim payments.
Now, there are reports there is bipartisan support for a continuing resolution which would keep the government funded beyond the November elections. But it's reported some Republicans in the House and Senate are pushing for a stopgap bill that would push a funding deadline into next year. Are later season rains helping maturing corn and soybeans right now? USDA releasing its latest batch of crop progress numbers. The agency reporting 65% of the corn crop right now is rated good to excellent. That's the same as last week, but 12% higher than last year at this time. The rain didn't fall where it was most needed for soybeans, causing soybean conditions to drop 2% from last week, also down to 65% good to excellent.
Largely due to crops running out of moisture in the easternmost part of the Corn Belt.
And there is some concern in the far upper Midwest with slow corn and soybean development amid possible frost in the forecast for this weekend. Meanwhile, high heat is the issue right now in the Southwest. Phoenix is on a record-setting hot streak, making 100 consecutive days above 100 degrees on Tuesday. And forecasters say Phoenix could set another record this week with its 55th day above 110 this year, while parts of the eastern U.S. are cooler than usual for this time of year.
Maybe a first taste of fall, or maybe some apple picking or something like that.
Central Texas has been hit by flash flooding. A driver in San Antonio using his cell phone to document how his SUV was submerged in floodwaters Tuesday morning. His SUV began to float, and then swirling currents spun it into another stalled vehicle. A firefighter tethered to a rope managed to drag him to safety. After a few hours, the water receded. Now, some areas of Texas seeing up to 7 inches of rain over the holiday weekend into Tuesday. And it looks like that western heat wave is intensifying. Meteorologist Jack Van Meter joins us with an update.
And it's still looking like that extreme heat is going to be present, especially along the southwest portions of the United States. As we can see, poor Phoenix, my goodness, 113 degrees later this afternoon. Very, very high temperatures. We do have high pressure that is setting up there and actually is going to be migrating for the next week across the southern portion of the rest of the country. But as we can see, high temperatures are going to be persisting from pretty much San Antonio, 94 degrees, all the way up to Chicago, 87 degrees as a high temperature. And it looks like tomorrow morning, again, still going to be fairly cool but warm at the same time. As we can see, New Orleans, 73 degrees. Then we start making our way north through Tulsa, so we can see 58. And our cooler spot on the map actually is going to be Bismarck, North Dakota, as we can see, pretty cool at just 45 degrees. And a beautiful farm view courtesy of Corey Peters in Randolph, Manitoba. Take a look at those round bales as far as the eye can see. And a spectacular sunset. Beautiful. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
We're also keeping an eye on South American weather right now as areas are getting ready to plant a new crop. In Argentina, we're hearing less corn could be planted this year. Dan Bossi of Ag Resource Company says it's due to pests, prices, and drought.
Our office down in Brasilia thinks that the Argentinian farmer plants around 18% less corn, plants about 12% more soybeans. It's kind of a change that they'll plant less corn because of leafhoppers and corn stunt disease, which really hit their crop last year. When I look at Brazil, because Brazilian farmers are now losing money and planting soybeans for the first time since 2009, they are rearing back, and at least some of the surveys saying that they will plant no more than last year, maybe 1% or 2% below. So with that in mind, the market's kind of doing its job in terms of limitation in Latin America.
Dave Chatterton of Strategic Farm Marketing tells me growth and acreage expansion is slowing down in South America for the 2025 crop.
We're really expecting kind of a flat year in Brazil, maybe some very modest growth, but no more than 1% and likely less than that. That's a new phenomenon. We're used to this kind of 2.5%, 3.5% growth a year. And that's reflective of the economics of the situation on the farm currently. In Argentina, we've all seen the stories about a big switch, 5 million, hectares moving out of corn and likely into soybeans.
Chatterton says he's also keeping an eye on dry conditions so far in Brazil, which if it continues could delay soybean planting. A new plant is being built to help supply sustainable aviation fuel. Sapphire Renewables is a wholly owned subsidiary of Southwest Airlines. It just broke ground on a new pilot plant at Conestoga Energy's Archelon Energy Facility. That's in Liberal, Kansas. The plant will transform corn stover into low-carbon feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel. Once finished, it's estimated the plant will be capable of processing 10 tons of corn stover every day, which will yield cellulosic ethanol that can be upgraded to SAF. The company is targeting late 2025 to begin operations. And grains continuing to make up some ground midweek. Can this upward trend continue? I'll have a closer look coming up in Markets Now. And later we take a trip down a river where you can get lost in spirit, but not in location, in the country. Grains continue to rally on Wednesday. Rich Nelson with Allendale joins us with some analysis. And We've had a nice rally in the grains, Rich. Are we trying to price in lower yield at this point?
And that's a good question. I would say it's not exactly a lower yield we're pricing in. Perhaps we would say it's not as big of a yield increase coming as the market had prior expected. Keep in mind, at one point, soybeans, based on both yields and export concerns, they're pricing in the idea of perhaps stock numbers as much as 120 million bushels over USDA's most recent estimate. So I think we're simply reining in some what were prior very bearish expectations here.
Right, and that was what you found in your annual survey on yield, wasn't it?
That sure is right. So results released here Wednesday, we got to point out 183 or 182.5 bushels an acre for corn. That's down 0.6 from USDA's August numbers. Soybean side 53.3. That's only up 0.1 from USDA's August numbers. So I think there is a lightly changed narrative, perhaps with this survey as well as with this dryness showing up across the Midwest here now.
Do you think that points towards maybe USDA not making many changes in the September WASDE, Rich?
Well, that's a good possibility. And keep in mind, I'm not going to post a definite answer on that one simply because keep in mind the past few years we have seen as time goes into harvest, we find a little better crops than expected. And given this year's good July precip and maybe backed off rainfall for August, I'm still not going to say it's not a possibility. So it's a 50-50 chance right now whether USDA will be raising yields or not in next week's report.
Yeah. And demand is picked up, but the funds are covering shorts. How much will they push this thing?
That's a good question here. Keep in mind here, because on the corn side especially, if we don't have a yield increase next week, and we're left with these stock numbers around 2.0 or 2.1 billion bushels, this could allow this market to have a little more upside, perhaps another 30 to 40 cents on corn. Soybeans, maybe another 20 cents or so. So keep in mind, there is still upside if we don't have this yield increase coming for next week's report.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Rich Nelson with Alan Dale. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Taking a look at the drought monitor, we can see that areas, especially in West Virginia, really not being able to dig out from that drought condition. As we can see, the whole state is actually going to be in that moderate all the way up to actually exceptional levels of drought. And that's actually starting to migrate north up just into Ohio as well. As we can see, some of that extreme and moderate drought is starting to make its way north there. And as also we can tell, the Great Lakes states as well starting to see some of that just abnormally dry conditions. Unfortunately, it is not looking any better, especially out here in Kansas, where we can see dry to that moderate drought really setting in as well. And poor Minnesota up there as well, seeing pretty dry temperatures too. Precipitation outlook, again, it's going to be following the dry outlook. As we can see, much from the Great Plains all the way up to the Great Lakes states, as we can see, abnormally dry for the next foreseeable little bit, especially in the middle of September. Really not going to be seeing a whole lot of moisture set in as we have another ridge start to build in the middle of the country. We are going to be seeing some precipitation, especially on the Pacific Southwest and or Northwest, I should say, and down by Florida as well. All right, here's our jet stream energy. The whole reason why we're seeing these systems slowly but surely set up in the states. As we can see, we have this long digging trough that's going to come on and pretty much set up across the Great Lakes region, bringing very cooler temperatures for much of the northern part of the Midwest. And then as we can see on the backside is we're going to have that that ridge start to build up and really force those high temperatures. But what this is really going to do is start to block out precipitation chances again for much of the country as we're starting to see more summertime temperatures come back. And remember, September, again, it's going to be that battle between hot and cold, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Precipitation estimate throughout the states. As we can see, just a little bit in the northern part of the country, and as we can see down by New Orleans, going to be seeing a decent slug of moisture moving in later in the week. Cleveland, Mississippi, showers, 85 degrees, low of 67 degrees. Berlin, New Hampshire, patchy fog in the morning, then that'll burn off with the sunshine, 79 degrees, 47 degrees, and Springfield, Minnesota, thunderstorms, 75, 47.
Coming up, another state may soon ban the sale of lab-grown meat. And later, enjoying a day out on the river while knowing exactly where you are. See this special technology in action along one river in Tennessee in the country. We've been keeping you updated on this construction on what would be Nebraska's largest cattle feedlot. Now it's soon to start taking in feeders. Blackshirt Feeders is reportedly preparing to receive cattle later this month. DairyHerd.com first telling you about the state-of-the-art facility near Hagler. It aims to expand to 150,000 head of cattle by the time work is done on the project at the end of 2026. It also features innovations like a rolled concrete base and biodigesters to produce methane from manure. While local officials and residents express both hope and skepticism, concerns remain over water use, increased traffic, and potential environmental impact. The $200 million project could boost local employment, but faces scrutiny from environmental experts and smaller operations. Speaking of Nebraska, it may become the next state to ban cultivated meat. The state's governor recently signed an executive order to limit sales. Republican Governor Jim Pillen, who is a veterinarian and livestock producer, has agreed to create strict guidelines when it comes to state agencies and its contractors from obtaining lab-grown meat. He's also ordered the state's Department of Ag to start a rulemaking process to ensure any lab-grown meat products sold in the state are properly labeled. He also announced that during the upcoming legislative session, he would work with senators to create legislation banning lab-grown meat sales in Nebraska. Earlier this year, Florida became the first state in the nation to ban the sale of lab-grown meat. Well, sometimes it's fun just to get lost in the moment traveling along a lazy river. But technology along one river in Tennessee is helping keep safety in mind. How it's helping lead the way next in the country. A scenic Middle Tennessee River now has GPS markers along its shoreline to guide recreational users as well as emergency personnel. As Charles Denny reports, the University of Tennessee Extension was a leading partner in the project along the Buffalo River.
The Buffalo River twists its way for dozens of miles through Perry County. Several feet deep in some areas, shallow rapids in other parts, this beautiful river can be enjoyed by many people.
This river is a little bit special because it does flow from south to north, just like the Tennessee River flows in Perry County as well.
But sometimes pretty scenery can start to all look the same. If you're traveling the Buffalo, how do you know where you are? Here, a boat ride to spots where local leaders are working on this issue. Crews will be busy the next few weeks installing 130 of these GPS markers along the shoreline and on the 13 bridges that span the river. It's called the Buffalo River Blueway Project. UT Extension Director Amanda Mathenia was asked by local leaders to coordinate the effort. She says a natural fit for Extension.
ANR, Ag and Natural Resources, this river is a natural resource that we have. And also with the job appointment is community economic development. This river is also tourism for the county. We want to bring in those tourism dollars.
The markers are for recreational use, kayakers and canoeists, and they'll be useful for safety purposes. If first responders have to rescue someone on this river, they'll know exactly where to look. Local rescue squad and government leaders say they sometimes get calls where people can't describe where they are on the river, even locals who know this area well.
You know, what can we do to make the river safer, not only for the locals, but for our guests and our tourists? So if this local could get confused to where there's at, then it was so important for us to have some kind of resource to GPS that could potentially save someone's life or at least get them off the river.
Adding the signs gives people a solid point of reference. In addition to the enhanced safety factor the markers provide, there's the opportunity to increase businesses and create jobs along the waterway.
I mean, everybody talks about outfitters and, you know, places to rent your canoes and get your fishing gear and things like that. Well, when these people get off the water, they're going to have somewhere to go eat. They might want somewhere to stay. There is a ton of potential for the Buffalo River to be utilized even more.
The Buffalo River is as much a part of this county as any landmark, and the goal is to keep it safe. The river also offers a sense of peace, both from its beauty and now the security of knowing your location. This is Charles Denny reporting.
And that's all the time we have for this morning. Thanks for watching. For all of us at AgDay, I'm Michelle Rook. Have yourself a great day out in farm country.